Times change. The marketing landscape changes. One thing that's been solid as a rock for decades is email. For scaling brands, we find that 65% of revenue in Klaviyo comes from buyers. And on a 7-day last click, we find that customer retention is 10 times more cost-effective than ads. Conversion rate optimization is even more cost-effective. Translation: if you aren't doing email, SMS, and CRO, you're spinning your wheels on new customers and spending way too much to drive revenue. Unfortunately, with the growth of e-commerce and the onslaught of email, Gmail and Yahoo are making it harder than ever to reach the inbox. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have, so if you need help with this mess, come to pallethouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak to me directly.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
What worked on Black Friday? Interesting little tactics. And this is something that I was really pleased to hear. Offer mystery in the subject line. It was a surprise. Being clear with the offer is going to beat some boring, bland subject line. But if you have a really strong hook on a subject line, can it beat offer clarity? Yeah, sure. So we know triple taps work. What about a pentatap? I do not recommend you send 8, 9, 10, 11 emails to someone in one day. Not a recommendation. But it's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I am your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pallet House email and customer retention team. If you want to make the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue a large part of your digital ecosystem, then follow us on your favorite podcast app today. This time, we're going to talk about what worked on Black Friday. We've just kind of done our post-mortem tactics and results, just some interesting information for you and things that you can take and use maybe in the rest of December. So you're going to get this episode maybe December 7. There's time for you to put together a 12 days of Christmas, maybe use some of the stuff that we've learned for Black Friday. So here we are. We're going to just share our cool tactics with you. Right? Because we love you. Because it is the world's best email and retention podcast. So, interesting little tactics. Sending just off the hour. So, if you're going to send at 6 p.m., you send at 6:03. So when everyone else is dumping out their emails, you're right on the top. And of course, this is not just a great Black Friday tactic, it's a great all the time tactic, right? Because everybody's kind of sending at some hour, all year round. Plain text emails perform great. I mean, that's, pretty well known. Frankly, I'm not sure. The reasons, the big possible reasons are it inboxes better, or it is just kind of like a surprise. Oh, hey, it looks different, and so it gets a better reaction. It's probably a bit of both, right? But anyway, just and when we say plain text email, we mean like when someone opens it in Gmail, it looks like an email from Frank at the company, right? So plain text emails did great. In all cases, it was a clear outcome. And this is something that I was really pleased to hear from our team. We had a team that was power sending for dozens of accounts. Offer mystery in the subject line. It was a surprise. So, guess what our Black Friday offer is? And then you got to click to find out. Now, I'll admit, everybody, that when I go and talk about Black Friday, I say make the offer obvious. And so this is counter to that. Let me disambiguate, or let me equivocate the two. So being clear with the offer is going to beat some boring, bland subject line. Just being clear with the offer so they know people are in their inbox. They're like, I just want to know what the deal is. So your average subject line, being clear with the offer is going to beat it. But if you have a really smart marketer who creates a really strong hook on a subject line, can it beat offer clarity? Yeah, sure. Especially if you've been sending out your offer for like a week and people know what the offer is, right? So then they see it in your inbox and they're like, oh yeah, what was it? They got to click to remind themselves, right? You know what I mean? So It is possible obviously for a well-crafted email to beat offer clarity. So congratulations to my team for putting together a strategy that beat that. And just an interesting finding for all of you, that maybe trying a very tight and punchy subject line that, in a cheeky way hides the offer and they got to click to get it. I think you got to be a little bit cheeky, so that there's this playful feeling as they open to see what the offer is. So cool one. That was really cool. That was a pleasant surprise when we were going through everything that worked. So we standard triple tap. We triple tap, of course, Black Friday. Everybody triple tap. And that's like you send an email in the morning and then one in the afternoon and then one in the evening. There is some, we do not have a position on if it's better to open with your engaged and then follow up with everybody, or to open with everybody and follow up with engaged, right? Different people, different senders, different power senders in our team have different ways that they approach the segmentation. Klaviyo has talked about, hey, send to like a crazy ultra engaged segment and then to the rest of the list 1 hour later, and you're going to get an inboxing boost because the inbox providers think that the first part was just a test and the rest of the list is going to be that engaged. I've never seen that, and also like really top players on our team have never really seen that play out. It always, when you put it together, it gets the results that you thought it would get. So that means you're fine. And it's also a real big hassle to set up, right? So you are better off just starting with your engaged and then sending to the rest of the list, or starting with the list and then sending to more engaged segments later on in the day. You're better off with those two. One constant concern about this is, hey, when I'm doing like a triple tap day, I want to make sure that my best people get the email. So in the very least, I'll start with a small list and then move on to a bigger list. In my mind, the only thing that really matters here is that send size consistency. Because if you send to the exact same list size the whole time, I mean, this isn't even a consideration. In my case, when I was doing some consulting, I finished off with small, tight segments. Like really, really engaged was the kind of evening one, and it worked well. So I can personally say, hey, we did the big Black Friday send, and then later on in the day, it just got tighter and tighter. This, of course, is in breach of our discussion with senders.co, Benny and Omer, when they were talking about send size consistency, although it's calculated on a 24-hour basis. And we're talking about a triple tap that all happens in the same day. So also, I have this suspicion that the inbox providers kind of just throw the book out on kind of Black Friday weekend. I feel like probably someone there is like, look, like it's going to be inboxing Armageddon if we don't just loosen up on the statistical threshold to inbox on Black Friday, because people are so aggressive. And, think about Google. Like if a message inboxes and people, especially Meta. So Meta and Google both have these kinds of deployment. I'm not a media buyer, so I don't know exactly what these are called, but there's kinds of deployments where they mix in retargeting audience with your primary audience. Why? Because you get a better click-through rate, right? And of course, I mean, if you're a skilled media buyer who is really trying to control the awareness funnel, you would not use these. You would have your unaware totally separate from your retargeting, right? So you can control the message and the spend on those. But if you're just kind of, trying to get some quick results, you'd mix those together. And what happens with those mixes? Well, when somebody buys from an email, if they were in your retargeting funnel, like if your retargeting addresses were in your awareness funnel, if you had it mixed, your ROAS is going to go through the roof, right? And what do they want on Black Friday? They want your ROAS to go through the roof. So both Google and Meta do this. Google, of course, has an email system, Gmail. Wow, they can just sit on this email system and find a way to have their ROAS go through the roof on Black Friday by just inboxing more, by just letting people be aggressive. So just caveat, I have this suspicion that around Black Friday specifically, where everyone gets so aggressive with inboxing, that you have a more lenient statistical threshold to inbox so that their ad systems show a good ROAS because people are spending so much. So let's keep that in mind. That's kind of interesting, right? So anyway, back to what we were discussing. You can go do the whole list and then get tighter. You can start smaller and then go bigger throughout the day. Of course, if you are in a static send size regime, and you would definitely want to do that if you were having inboxing problems or if it was just part of your rule set, it doesn't really matter. Now, that's triple taps, right? So we know triple taps work. We certainly know that tightening for some of them works, right? It just helps keep the engagement up. You don't want to be in a situation where Google's like, these guys, their engagement's really falling off, really falling off. You want to keep your engagement up. So that's why you might tighten on triple tap. Well, what about a pentatap? Yeah. So like full disclosure, the biggest brand we did eight emails on Black Friday. And that was because they did like more than 8 last year. And we had to just like keep up. I mean, we couldn't risk. It was just as much of a risk for us to send 8 emails in one day as it was for us to, for some reason, look like we didn't deliver in the same way we did last year. So first of all, this is not a recommendation to go send 8 or more emails to anyone in one day. I do not recommend you send 8, 9, 10, 11 emails to someone in one day. Not a recommendation. But based on what we saw, you can probably try Black Friday pentataps. And I don't know if you guys are doing Boxing Day or whatever other holidays. There might be another holiday where you could try that. Again, I just said I suspect that there's more lenient inboxing thresholds around Black Friday. I don't have as strong a suspicion of that for things like Boxing Day or around Christmas. But maybe, right? And I'll just say, like, if you're looking for a Hail Mary, you can try a pentatap on Boxing Day to just, really drive results in the last throes of Q4. Now, disclaimer, I do not see your inboxing. I do not see your Klaviyo, right? Would be if you're going to go and send 5 emails in one day to your audience, this is your decision. This is not a recommendation. This is just something to think about. If you have a good system for triple taps, if you're triple tapping on big days, like Black Friday, and you know what you're doing, okay, well, hey, what am I saying here? I'm saying a pentatap is an option, right? If you do not have a good system for double taps on big days, if your house isn't in order, definitely not a recommendation you do it. But hey, you heard it here first. Okay. Yeah. How about like just where revenue comes from? That's kind of interesting, right? So, I did a lot of study on this with the brand over the holidays, so I can share just some thoughts on this, and this falls into this falls in line with general study that we do on segmentation, and so it was nice to see a very specific Black Friday version of it, kind of while running it in the trenches on a consulting contract, and seeing how it changed a little bit for Black Friday versus the rest of the time. So I've told you before, we do like a mailable list. That's like everything that's safe to send to. That's like a core. And then all different kind of segments rotate around that core. Okay. So addresses, buyers from more than 2 years ago who were unengaged, who were not on the mailable list. So the mailable list has engaged and unengaged, but it's people that we would message. My marketers, hey, any day you can send to the mailable list any day. It's mailable, right? It's a mailable safe list. So buyers beyond 2 years who were not in the mailable list, 12% of revenue. It's interesting, right? Now, I'll say in this case, on this client, I was consulting because their inboxing was poor. So you might see a bigger share than that. But just so you get an idea, right? Buyers from more than 2 years ago, 12%. Implied consent, 8%. It's kind of interesting, right? Which means the mailable list was 80%. Okay, and seriously, like almost doubled the send size. And it's 20% of revenue. So list size is the most misleading metric in email. You can send to another 500,000 addresses and make a little bit more money. And some of those addresses, like if it's a very small boost that you get from adding 500,000 addresses, those addresses might just have been in your ads funnels anyway. Like if you send to this list of 500,000 people, some of them are, even if they're not engaged with email and haven't bought in a long time, some of them out of that 500,000 are going to just be in your ecosystem. And then Klaviyo just grabs the attribution. So list size is incredibly misleading. But what do we see here? We see Klaviyo attributed revenue, 20% came from doubling the send size and reaching all these other addresses. Within the mailable list, 13% of overall revenue was unengaged. And so that makes the balance of it, which is, let's see, 33, 66. Oh, wow, look at that. 66% of the revenue from campaigns in this study was from engaged. So what's engaged? Look, our engaged is complicated because it's opens, clicks, active on site, viewed product, checkout started. There are different time frames for each one. It's trade secret how we do that. But 2/3 of the revenue for the campaigns was just from the engaged, which is a very small amount. Again, list size is the most misleading number in email because you think, oh, it's got a big list, it's going to drive these big results. Well, actually, 2/3, like literally 2/3 of the revenue was coming from a quarter of the list. That's just the way it works, right? And that's why, there's an episode, I don't know if you're going to see this episode. You probably going to see this episode later because this one's going to come out early because it's Black Friday specific, but where we talk about what to do with when you get an email system that's pooched. Someone just drops a pooched email system in your lap, which happens to us every January. That's like our January thing. Hey guys, get ready. Recommendation is find if you're dealing with an email system that's pooched and you can't do a rewarm because someone's tapped you on the shoulder and said, no, we got to keep email marketing, no rewarming this. You want to find a tight, safe send size that you can just stick to, right? That drives results, but is also driving good engagement. And so, look, here's some numbers that just, you can see it right in the data. 2/3 of the revenue coming from 25% of the list. Okay, so when you're going to deal with a system that is pooched and you need to fix it, you're going to go down to that 25% where you get 2/3 of the revenue. That's where you're going to go, right? Our prospect buyer split was 80-20. So 20% of the revenue from prospects, 80% of the revenue from buyers. Our general split is more like 60-40 or 2/3 to 1/3. That's what it's more like. So generally speaking, we usually see buyers account for 60, maybe 65% of the revenue. And in this case, we saw buyers account for 80. So Black Friday should for everyone out there be huge for reconverting everyone that came in that year. And you can go back and check a cool episode I ran some time back where I talked about an email system. You take I'm actually going to redo this episode sometime soon. Like I do the segmentation episode with a new idea every once in a while because people like it. People just like, segmentation is super important for email. But you take your engaged list and of course you split it in four. First, you split it by prospect and buyer. If you've been listening to the World's Best Email Retention podcast, the first thing you do segmentation wise is take your segmentation and split it, clone it, and say one placed order 0 times overall time. The other one say placed order 1 or more times overall time. You get your prospects and your buyers separated because it's the biggest binary. You look for binaries. And then take those two, clone them, and on one you say address created created less than 365 days ago, and the other one is created greater than 365 days ago. And then you've got this neat little 2x2 where you've got your prospects and your buyers, and you've got this year's business and previous year's business, right? And so what you want to see for sure, what you want to see in Black Friday is your business from more than 1 year ago, your 2+ year ago business pop. That's a signal that your email system is really driving results, really punching above its weight, because it's driving revenue from people that are likely not in your ad system. There's no ad cost associated with that address, so you don't have to share in a way of thinking, but you don't have to share attribution with that address, right? That's all you, right? And that is what allows your ads teams to reach further up the funnel and grow awareness more because they're getting a boost. And I talked about this on an episode. Again, I don't know if you're going to hear this episode before that episode, but I talked about a case where we had, a client who wasn't using used our email system last year, not this year, but we had insight through because they were with our ads teams, and they were in spam, and this year, not from us, from the other ads team, from the other email team. And the ads teams couldn't grow to the same extent because every time they'd push and push and push on ad spend, they'd hit this point where they kind of topped out and they'd hit their ROAS limits because they weren't getting all that low cost revenue from email. Well, lo and behold, I came across another example of that. And I just love these because these just confirm that you can't scale without email. Another client came through, we went through the whole audit and proposal process, and they closed on they signed up for our advertising, but they didn't sign up for Pilot House email and customer retention because they had an in-house team and all these reasons. And I went to them in the audit and I said, look, here's what's wrong, right? And those things mattered in Q4. Those things that were wrong mattered. And so their email system did not do what it did last year. So we can see that in the numbers. And they had trouble scaling, right? I see this every day. And there's not just email. Of course, CRO too. Look, let's just close this off. Email and CRO. What's this 80-20 buyer thing that we're talking about is about low cost revenue. It's about getting a buyer at a low cost, and the easiest buyer is the buyer you've already got. So Klaviyo should just be driving low cost repeat purchases. My God, that's what it should be doing, right? From buyers who are outside of your ecosystem right now, bringing them back in. And CRO should be like your kind of website optimization, should be increasing your direct load conversion rate, because that improvement feeds through to all channels and there's no ad expense. So both of those are two activities with no ad expense. I digress, right? What worked on Black Friday? Sending on odd hours, lots of plain text. Offer mystery in your subject line, which was a surprise to me and really cool, and I recommend you try it. Triple taps were go, and we can even cautiously, I wouldn't say recommend. We can cautiously acknowledge that pentataps can work on peak days. Not a recommendation. I do not recommend you blow out your deliverability by just completely going nuts. But if you've got someone who has a good double tap, right? Like they know how to do it. You look at the metrics, you're like, this looks good. Yeah, we can acknowledge that higher numbers of sends on a day, on a really important day like Black Friday, can work. And where the revenue came from. So that's some great stuff for you. Nice tight episode. Right, we got that done in half an hour. I know some of my episodes are like over an hour and I got to split them in half. So, hey, entrepreneurs, executives, spammers, and webmasters, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright. Hey
entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.